David Okonkwo. I am a neurosurgeon at the University of Pittsburgh. I run the neurotrauma service at UPMC Presbyterian Hospital, which is the mothership of the UPMC system. And I've been doing head injury research for exactly half of my life now, as it turns out. I'm going to talk about the SyNAPSe trial. I am not the PI. I just happen to be the PI of the site that has the highest number of patients enrolled in the study. All right, so I have a shorter task, which is to just focus specifically on SyNAPSe, although I am going to do a little bit of background. And I'm more optimistic and more proud of my specialty than perhaps Dr. Wright is, because I think that we do fantastic things for people with head injuries. And I think the great things we do for people with head injuries is part of why it's been so difficult to demonstrate a treatment effect. It's very easy to demonstrate a treatment effect in rats that go into a wire cage in a vivarium, and it's much harder to demonstrate a treatment effect in a patient who's in an ICU getting round-the-clock care from people who are vested in their outcome. So the reality is that we have dropped mortality rates from 80% to 30%, and a lot of that has to do with prevention successes, with automotive engineering, with resuscitation, trauma systems, getting patients to sites of definitive care, with protocolized management in the ICU, and then better on the back end with rehabilitation and societal integration programs. But as Jeff Manley and Andrew Moss pointed out in their paper with a very nice exhaustive review of this, that at the time there were 27 phase 3 trials. That was even before the COBRA trial, which was recently published in JAMA, which brings us to 28 phase 3 clinical trials that have failed. So there is an opportunity for improvement, for sure. And we'd like this number to be better. So we would like to see something that we can do over and above our standard emergent neurosurgical intervention and ICU care for this patient population. And how are we going to get there? Well, we need to bring new therapies to market. And I am very appreciative of BHR Pharma, because if you look carefully at the history of TBI trials, Big Pharma has walked away from this disease entity after so many failures. And so I think it's fantastic that there is an industry partner that is in this game and engaged and willing to step up to the plate to sponsor a study. So we do need to do this, but we need to do that in a more methodical and careful way. And I'm not going to get into that too much. And it would be great if we had better diagnostic and prognostication and modeling that would parse it out. And the sliding dichotomy is a big step forward over a lot of previous ways of doing this. And then we'd love to individualize care, and so we're keenly interested in things like the BioProtect that are going to bring us more data about biomarkers. But what about progesterone? And is it the right candidate for TBI? And David went through a lot of this stuff, but I'll tell you that if you just look at it from the perspective of the clinical trials and head injury work group that was put together by the NIH, and this group got together, and at the time that number wasn't 27 or 28, it was lower than that, but said, listen, we're not doing very well at this, and what should we give as guidance to make it more likely for something to translate successfully? Because there were several things that were probably brought forward to clinical trial too soon. And if you look through that, they basically said that, well, here from our perspective are the requirements for successful translation. And the mechanism of action should be demonstrated in animal models. The fact that that drug acts on that mechanism in a neuroprotective way should be demonstrated in animal models. The pathomechanism you're going after should actually occur in living humans with TBI. We got to make sure that we've addressed safety and tolerability and measured that in humans before proceeding with definitive trials. And then it would also be fantastic if there were more drug-sensitive endpoints. And the fact is that of the 28 failed phase 3 clinical trials, not one of those agents has ever met all of these criteria. Not one. And David made some reference to that concept as well. So progesterone is a very dirty drug, and this is a good thing. And not to get into this too much more, but it's a very good thing that progesterone has all of these targets. And why is that? Well, that's because TBI is a heterogeneous disease, and this is the famous slide from Jeff Manley and Elisa Jean that came out of yet another work group that we put together with the NIH about classification strategies for TBI. But here's the truth. The truth is that you can't say that the person who has just a pure epidural hematoma is suffering from the same, quote, disease as a person who is suffering from diffuse swelling. And yet, what most of those studies have done, like if you take the MDA receptors, they've been studied in a very, very specific animal model of something that is very, very specifically designed to induce excitotoxicity, and then it gets translated into clinical trial, and that one drug that's doing one thing can't handle all of this. So if it's going to work, it better be a dirty drug, as progesterone is. And we know that progesterone is targeting active pathophysiologic mechanisms in animals. We know that it has demonstrated neuroprotection in those animal models, and that we know that these same pathophysiologic mechanisms are happening in humans. So right off the bat, progesterone has gotten the first three check marks. And then there have been two independent phase 2, in essence, clinical trials that have demonstrated safety, number one. And then when you look more carefully, you realize that they have both given us early indications of a potential efficacy. And this is, again, singularly unique for progesterone, that there have been two studies that have been randomized prospective studies in man that have shown significance for outcome. And again, there was a shift towards more favorable outcomes in these studies as well, over and above just an effect on mortality. So now we have two trials, and one in the U.S. trial in particular was specifically designed as a safety trial. And so we have safety and tolerability data in humans that also gave some insight into the potential dose that would be appropriate. And but progesterone doesn't get this one because the fact is we don't know how to measure excitotoxicity unless you're in a very few specific centers and you're using something like microdialysis to glean an indirect measure of excitotoxicity by measuring glutamate levels. But by and large, we don't have this in our ICUs, and so I can't fail progesterone for this because it would be asking it to do something that it isn't at present possible. All right, so what is SyNAPSe? SyNAPSe is the study of the neuroprotective activity of progesterone in severe traumatic brain injuries. It's a phase 3 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study to investigate the efficacy and safety of progesterone infusion. It's sponsored by BHR Pharma, which is a division of Bazan's Healthcare, a global company that has offices throughout the world, established partnerships in 120 countries worldwide. This is a family business that goes back 4 generations. I had the pleasure of meeting Antoine Bazan's last fall and having dinner with him. But again, as I said before, I applaud BHR Pharma for having skin in the game and for not walking away from TBI and from taking something that has a lot of brilliant preclinical and early clinical data to support its translation in a phase 3 fashion. And therefore, we have a trial that went through all of the headaches to get an FDA buy-in such that if the trial is successful, there will be an NDA approved for it. The aim of the study is to determine the efficacy and safety of BHR 100, which is their version of progesterone, in severe TBI, GCS 3 to 8. It's 120 hours beginning within 8 hours after the injury, and the safety and clinical benefit will be assessed through secondary endpoints. It's a phase 3 multi-center randomized double-blind trial in approximately 150 centers worldwide. The management is in accordance with guidelines, and independent DSMB is obviously involved, and treatment allocation is done with a centralized randomization system. The study, SyNAPSe, is more closely related to the Zhao Chinese study than to the U.S. study, in that it's focusing on severes, and it's 5 days administration as it was in the Chinese study. The goal target is 1,180 subjects who meet these inclusion criteria. one-to-one randomization of drug versus a placebo with competitive enrollment across the sites on a global basis. The primary outcome measure is the GOS at 6 months post-injury. These are the secondary endpoints that will likewise be assessed. The 30-day follow-up is the first follow-up time point, and this is subject status, including mortality and basically the hospital disposition as well as SAEs. And then the 180-day or 6-month follow-up is the primary endpoint of GOS and GOSE at 6 months. But furthermore, there's SF36, again, an assessment of any AEs or SAEs and subject status, including mortality. The first U.S. site opened in June of 2010. We were proud to enroll the first patient in July of 2010. We randomly enrolled the 500th patient in May of 2012, so it was going to be a slam dunk that we enrolled the 1,000th patient, right? But no, I think we were like 1,004. So it didn't work out perfectly. The first site opened in Europe in November, in Asia in December of 2010. The first DSMB meeting was in June of 2011. The third one was in August of 2012. The interim analysis in January of 2013 supported carrying the trial through to its fruition. This is the geographic distribution of the sites: 53 sites in the United States, 5 in the Middle East, 7 in Argentina, the Asia Pacific sites, and then also Russia and Eastern Europe. And again, the target is 1,180. Enrollment as of a few hours ago is 1,020, and therefore there are that math doesn't add up, but there are 160 that are that are remaining to be enrolled. So the enrollment is quite solid. There are 21 different countries with an active SyNAPSe trial site. And then when you look at the enrollment of this slide is obviously a month old because this is up to 1020 now. But if you look at how long it took to get to 500 and then you look at how long it took to get from 500 to 1,000, the trial has clearly gained momentum. Again, the biggest threat to almost every head injury trial that's ever been conducted has been enrollment. And so it's fantastic that both SyNAPSe and PROTECT are doing so well from an enrollment perspective, and it's a testament to the dedication of the investigators across all the sites. As would be expected, this is disproportionately a disease of the young and a predominance of males, and that the GCS at entry, the most common time point, so it's mostly 6 and 7s. The distribution across those GCSs, and as is often the case in these TBI trials, motor vehicle crash is the most common underlying reason for the TBI. So in summary, progesterone is a candidate neuroprotective agent with some of the most robust preclinical and early clinical data to support translation. In fact, there are 2 well-designed, well-performing phase 3 clinical trials underway to confirm the safety as well as now the efficacy of progesterone, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.